My name is Mario Plena. I'm a historian, less of an activist. I used to be more of an activist before. I'm just very honored to be here and talk to two friends of mine, Gautam Bhan and Arvind Narrain, about a book that came out 8 years ago now, in 2005. They are both co-editors of Because I Have a Voice, Queer Politics in India, a book in which I contributed a couple of articles as well. And we're here to talk about the book in the context of the queer movement or queer activism in India. All of us come from a long legacy of queer activism in South Asia, in India specifically. A legacy that begins in the 1970s with stories of people coming out and telling the world who they are. There were small groups in Bombay in 1977 called the Longevasi Hill. Then you have stories of two women who got married to each other in Bhopal, Leela and Urmila, in 1987. And through these early coming outs of sorts, you had the beginnings of queer activism in India. The 1990s saw a lot of work around AIDS, which was something that happened across the globe, but also in India. You had the early death of many people who lived with HIV and AIDS, many of them activists themselves. And then you had a slow growth of an identity politics around groups that were organized by lesbians and gays, later bisexuals, much later hijras and trans people. So this is the activism that I think a lot of us came into when we started our work in the late 90s and early 2000s. This is also the world that Because I Have a Voice came and spoke to, drew inspiration from, and also tried to inspire politics around queerness, something that was very new in 2005. The context at that time was legally, there was a case already, which is still in the, now it's in the Supreme Court, but at that time it was in Delhi High Court. The Nas Foundation India Trust in Delhi had laws in Delhi High Court to read down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which I'm sure both of you will talk about. Organizationally, it was a time when all the LGBT groups that were formed in the 90s were now building coalitions outside themselves, coalitions with non-LGBT groups, in order to build a larger support for the reading down of the law, but also to build larger support against violence that was happening against hijras across the country. Some of the most important work around that happened in Bangalore with coalitions with the PUCL locally. There was this enormous and most wonderful explosion of queer art and film and history and writing. Some of it was a gaze from the outside inwards. So you had a film called Fire that drew a lot of controversy at that time. You also had a lot of queer people thinking about their own lives. And so you had, you had writings by gay men on gay life, you had writings by lesbian women on lesbian lives. And it is in this context that you have to also see where Because I Have a Voice comes in 2005. You also had beginnings of a lot of celebratory conferences, celebratory marches all across the country, in Calcutta and Bombay and also Bangalore. Small groups, small celebrations, small film festivals, these are happening a lot, but also with the new visibility, you see a lot of violent backlash that begins or becomes a little more obvious at this time. So some of us might know about the murder of two men in Delhi who got having sex with each other, Pushkin and Kuldeep, and in 2004. And the kind of sensationalization that received from the press. You also had simultaneously a lot of violence against the Hijra community, a lot of which was documented in Bangalore. So you have this larger context in 2005. And historically, I think that's the way I see the place of the book historically. But for the editors, sometimes the inspiration for the book could perhaps come from a small reading group taking place under a flyover in Delhi where there was a feminist office. And that's how they begin the introduction of the book. I'd just like to read a couple of paragraphs from that introduction to give you a context of what perhaps inspired them, and we can take the conversation further. From introduction by Arvind Narrain and Gautam Bhan. The rumble of the cars zipping across the flyover directly above the ceiling shook the small room almost continuously, sending tremors through the bodies of the dozen or so people who had gathered there. It was dusty Friday night, not unlike any other in the middle of a long Delhi summer, and the sense of excitement in the room almost seemed out of place. At first glance, the reason for the excitement wasn't apparent. A mixed group of men and women, both young and old, were seated on chadais on the floor reading to each other, raising their voices to be heard over the cars rumbling overhead. They spoke, they would say later, queer words, words of desire, of confession, of celebration, of empathy, and of resistance. Words that retold and reclaimed stories, poems, and narratives that had, until that night, excluded their identities, desires, and feelings. Queer words read by queer people with and for each other, finally being heard, even as the city literally rumbled on its way above their heads. There is a sense of freedom in the lives of many queer people in India today. It is a hesitant kind of freedom, for none of us can afford to forget how fragile the few accepting spaces we inhabit are, or how few of us have access to them. Nevertheless, this new freedom is already a heady feeling, and cradles within it a sense of hope that even 5 years ago seemed distant. New words surround queer lives today, and they are words chosen by queer people themselves to be part of a new language that speaks of change just as it steps towards it. This book is written in that new language. It seeks to bear witness to its existence, add to its vocabulary, and teach others how to read it and understand queer politics and queer lives. I'd like to start by asking both Arvind and Gautam how they, this is one experience of that moment in 2004 and 2005 when you began compiling Because I Have a Voice. So I'd like to begin by asking both of you what your experience personally of that moment was, and why you thought at that moment it was important to bring together a compilation such as this. Now, this is a very interesting book just in terms of structure, because not only does it have theory, but it also has personal life narratives and has stories of struggles that groups of people might have experienced among themselves. So it brings together different forms of narratives as well as different voices. So what is it about this moment that you thought was important to talk about? Queer lives in India.
8 years into okay. I think some of the things that you said resounded with me very much about that moment. It was, I was in Delhi, I was in Bangalore, and Delhi at that point is a very particular place because Pushkin had just happened. that murder had just happened. And what had happened around that murder was a couple of things. Pushkin used to work for USAID. So he was a very typical he was a very typical South Delhi boy. He worked for a multinational agency, he was elite, he was English speaking. Kuldeep was a Hindi speaking, and we never knew much about him because they would never talk about him. And this is one of these patterns you see in reporting always. When Ramchandra Siras, then the incident at Aligarh Muslim University happened, it took a fact-finding for many of us to go to Aligarh to find the name of the human being who was only ever called the rickshaw puller found with Siras. And Kuldeep was his name only came into circulation much later. So it was Pushkin, an unidentified man, and he lived in Anandpur, which was literally across the street from where I live in Delhi. And what happened there was that there was sort of a frontal assault on gay life in the city, just literally. Because every day the newspapers went off, the gay underbelly of the city was exposed, and you had these two competing narratives. You had the rich South Delhi men who were trawling for working class boys, and you had the working class boys who entrapped rich South Delhi men. And that narrative consistently, it was as much a narrative about class as it was about sexuality at that point, as all narratives of sexuality always are. But what most immediately happened in our lives is that the last place where Pushkin and Kuldeep were seen was at a party in a place called Sadik Nagar. Now, Sadik Nagar is a very classic public Delhi neighborhood. It's Delhi Development Authority flats, they look like BDA flats. And it was a place that had historically been home to a very interesting array of parties, let's say, to which invitations were required by SMS. That party, thankfully, was just a going-away party for a Danish or Norwegian or Swedish, a Danish diplomat called Uffe. Uffe was 6'3" tall, and he would walk around Delhi wearing tiny jean shorts that were torn in the back. He was a character, But they had left Uffe's house. So what happened is that the police took Uffe's cell phone. Uffe left the next morning and left the country. But they got his cell phone and they got the number of every single person on his invite list, which meant every single person who had ever been invited to a gay party at Uffe's house. Which meant that a whole range of gay men in the city started getting called by the police. From morning to evening to night. Ostensibly only for information. But essentially what happened is when they were brought into the police stations, in 2005, it was no holds barred. It was fear, it was harassment, it was torture, and so then what happened is that a whole set of us spent 3 weeks going from station to station to station to station. That's all we did. One lawyer, one activist, and whoever got called. And you made teams, and we had a pager, and we just went morning to night, saying you can't ask this, you can't say that, you can't do this, you can't say that, you can't say leta hai ki deta hai, you can't say aurat hai ki mard hai, you can't say tere baap ko bula denge, you can't say any of this. But also so there was this sort of moment of deep fear that people were calling you up terrified because their numbers and addresses, and most of these people want out, right? But there was also this moment in which running from station to station saying you can't do this anymore felt like drawing some kind of line, and I think that's why this history of the book is really interesting because it was exactly at that moment where those lines were being drawn, where we were saying enough, where we were actually for the first time saying enough, and saying enough publicly in a way that, I remember talking to Arvind about this and we were thinking about the book, but the idea was that you can't just react. Hitler has found gang raped in a police station, you protest after. 4 men are entrapped and arrested in Lucknow, you protest after. Someone calls you in the middle of the night because they've been taken to AIMS for 2 years and given electroshock therapy, you protest after. Right? The door knocks in the middle of the night, you open it and 2 women have run away from their house holding their 10th class birth certificate and nothing else. And you move them around, and that's all we did. And time again, it was violence, torture, kidnapping, violence, harassment, torture, kidnapping. And we were sitting there saying at some point, we have to have other ways to think about our lives because on a daily basis we were not and so we were all searching for this new language, a language that was not just about what happened to us, but a language about how we wanted to talk about ourselves. I mean, the book's title actually came out of this way saying, enough of being described, we're going to speak. And so what happened when Pushkin died is for the first time, several of us wrote in the newspapers. We wrote in the Times of India, we wrote in the Sun Times, and we wrote as ourselves. We wrote with our full names. Okay, never done at that point. And we wrote in saying, if this is a murder, investigate the murder. Homosexuality is not on trial. Right? It's just a murder. Find out what happened. Stop making large claims about the community at large. And it was the first time that actually newspapers suddenly were accosted by queer people saying, you can't just write about me. Right? And there was that moment felt, that shift happened, I think, very powerfully. And it was a time when, as you said, the film festivals were starting, spaces of culture were opening up. People were beginning to find each other. You sensed a moment where it was possible to talk about sexuality and not just talk about violence. And of course, we didn't want to stop talking about violence because it was still a real part. But the question was, you can't imagine yourself only through violence. You can't come to a sense of self only through violence. And you can't imagine that you deserve not to be a subject of violence until you have some other way of having a sense of personhood. And most queer people we met had no way to imagine themselves as gay, had no way to imagine themselves as people who were worthy of dignity.
Outside fear.
Outside fear. I mean, so many people you met were like, well, this is what happens to people like us. That's what it was. It was the idea that this should not happen to people like us took a long time to come. And so I think what had happened was around 2005, the times of the book felt right. Because it was, it's a little bit like, it was that line. It was, we were part of this new language. We, in a sense, inherited from the activists who, the generation before us were really the activists who fought and personally paid. I mean, we didn't pay the kind of personal prices in our lives because we stood on the history we inherited. And I think really to come out in the 90s and organize and publish and write. And then, I came back to Delhi, 20 years old, wondering if it was possible to be a gay man in this country, and met a wonderful set of people who mentored and nurtured me into that space. And that was the generation to me that laid the base of this book. And this book was written 10 years before us. I mean, we simply kind of just put it together in a sense. And it was an astonishing legacy that we inherited. So I think for me, because felt right, because this title is like made for horrible puns. It's a because. For 2 years in the middle, anytime someone said because, someone would say, I have a voice. And it was most irritating, but it happened like that for a long time. But because came because I think it was a fight back. It was a way to take the language back. But there were enough of us to do it. We couldn't have done it any earlier. It's like the first Pride Parade could not have happened before 2008. This book could not have come out in 2000. It just could not have. There wasn't, that sense wasn't there. We met, we talked, and the working title of the book for a long time was actually "I'm out and here's why!" exclamation point. because that was what we wanted to do. It was meant to be a gigantic, forget it, enough, and we will write our own words. So I think it really was at that cusp.
Yeah, I'd say that I totally agree with what Gautam says.
Yeah, the principal group.
Maybe I just had a small personal, a more personal explanation, because I think it is actually linked to something called at Hyderabad we had the Asian Social Forum. I had gone for the Asian Social Forum, and I think for the first time I met this guy from Delhi who's at the Asian Social Forum, and incredibly articulate, fantastic in terms of his understanding of politics, and very interesting and stuff like that. I said, I really want to continue having this conversation with this guy, because he's really fascinating. So I said, hey, shall we edit a book on this together? He said, yes, let's do it. And so that's the way it went.
This is the problem.
So I think that would be just my personal addition to that book.
But that seminar was really interesting because it was a seminar called Nature Forum. It was the first. There were two fascinating seminars at the Nature Social Forum. One was, it was done by a group called PRISM at that point, and it was the first time. World Social Forum.
No, 2004.
Did we do Intersectionality?
2004 also. But that's true. It's part. I mean, what's interesting is what you see here on the cover is the cover of the second edition. But the first edition of the book had this amazing photograph from one of the protest / celebrations called Rainbow Planet from the World Social Forum in 2004. And it was just such a powerful moment because Prism did organize, I'll let you speak about that in a second. Prism organized this wonderful panel at the World Social Forum, which had activists literally from all over the world talking about the experience of sexuality through activism, practice, theory, etc. And it was really interesting to have fora like that, where sort of an international queer politics could be discussed in India.
I mean, it was also the way, because the discussion we were having at that point, and there was also that masculinities conference in Hyderabad right before.
No,
it was Bangalore. I clearly don't tell you that sense in this history, I'm making up as I go along. But there was a masculinities conference somewhere, I know we also had this conversation, and it was, it was Vinay, Chandran and Subhava who organized it, and it was that, because the question really at that point felt like, what is it that one will say? You know, and so one of our friends, Akshay Khanna, kept saying, well, if you want a voice, what are you going to say when you get it? So that was the second question. It wasn't enough to just start speaking. The whole question was, and especially if it was going to be this sort of first set of articulations out, if we were, and that's the conversation that was revolving around the World Social Forum, and this idea of intersectionality had come up, right? That you couldn't separate sexuality, race, caste, class, gender, religion and ability, and you couldn't do it because at that point there was this idea in wisdom that, you know, what do you mean by gay rights? And in the West, the whole language was equal rights. Gay people are the same as straight people, right? You want equal rights. But here, the conversation we were having is that straight people in India have no sexual rights. And so it's not like heterosexual Indians are walking around with freedom to love, freedom to choose, and they aren't getting burned by khap panchayats, and they can't step across lines. And so we were sitting here and saying, what does it mean to have compulsory marriage of a particular kind as your ideal for equal rights? And that's partly and it partly came out of the experience of us, you know, being in Delhi University colleges and realizing that when you talked about sexuality politics, the first people who understood you were 21-year-old women. And if there were 21-year-old women from Shillong in Delhi, then they understood you even before you started speaking. Because all the questions of unnatural, abnormal, against Indian culture, you know, questions of policing, of violation, of self-doubt, was a much broadly shared experience. It was not just peculiar to LGBT people. So, I think what happened is that this sense of intersections really allowed us to talk about sexuality in a different way from a sort of Western discourse of equal rights, of LGBT rights, and you know, the sense of queerness came out of that. And the question was, queer for us was everything that was not Mr. and Mrs. Gupta. You know, everything that was not Mr. and Mrs. Gupta, where Mr. Gupta was 1.5 inches taller than Mrs. Gupta, made exactly 25% more monthly income. They came from the same caste, the same, you know, religion, the same whatever. And the idea that actually no one lived in this heteronormative ideal, that no one actually lived this life.
And that's interesting because the title of your book says queer politics very explicitly. In 2005, the word queer was used not very much. And LGBT, I think, is also still used a lot, but at that time, LGBT was essentially what our politics was called. Or gay, you know, for those who didn't have any other words for it. And I think it was a particularly important decision, part of both of you, to use the word queer politics. So, do you want to talk about why you use the word queer? Who twisted whose arm?
Just a simple point, I think from what Gautam described so far, the idea was really how do you get on board a range of politics really within the world that we want to imagine. And I think the word queer, in the most simple sense, the way we thought of it, is really questioning the norms of gender and sexuality. And how you question the norms of gender and sexuality could be in diverse ways. It could be a transgender person who questions the fact that biological birth is not linked to the gender which one inhabits. It could be a person who says that sex work is a form of work. It could equally be a person who says that sexuality is fluid, it's not just gay or lesbian, the range of positions one could occupy. So really, I think in some ways, I think the word queer also came to us from, we quoted this activist from Bangalore, who some of you might know, a wonderful activist called Pamela, who committed suicide almost not 9 years ago, I think,
Right.
maybe 10 years this, but she would, for example, in every public performance, a public event she made, she spoke in. She'd always begin by saying, I'm a bisexual, hijra, sex worker. And that's really fantastic, because everybody's like shocked. Like, what do you mean? Because everybody, including gay men, including heterosexual people, including hijras, everybody. Because I mean, it's like you're questioning so many norms at the same time. And she, in some ways, I mean, though the word queer comes from maybe a Western context, obviously, clearly it comes from a Western context. I mean, it clearly, for us, it embodied or described a certain form of radical politics which has actually been lived out in the lives of people we do.
And I think, there was, and Famina is actually the exact example of it. The book is dedicated to her. And she also represented, queerness, it was one of those things, it's like, it wasn't necessarily just identity. Like, it was a lot in that sense like feminism. Like, it was a perspective, it was a politics, it was a viewpoint. And we used it partly also to say that, to signal something new, to challenge it, and to say you have, because every part of the law felt like a reclamation. So taking back the word felt equally important. And then there was this, I think you remember this discussion, then there was this very clear discussion that if you put the word gay or lesbian on the cover of the book, no bookstore will keep it. And actually a very clear discussion. Our publisher was like, it wasn't the discussion that tilted it. In the end, actually, at least we like to think we took this grand political intellectual discussion. But every time we had this question, Arvind Das, who published the book, she's like, that's all fantastic and very smart. But if you put gay and lesbian, I can't sell it. And we were like, that's great. But the reasons for our choice, etc. But then we had a hard time with the book anyway. The bookstore still didn't carry it. It opened. They didn't carry it for a number of reasons until the first big reviews came out in the newspapers. We had a very hard time getting the book stopped.
One of the most, for me, fascinating parts of Because I Have a Voice is just the sheer diversity of voices in the book itself. And I remember being at the launch of the book in Bangalore in 2005, and Lawrence Liang of the Alternative Law Forum was speaking. And it was a really interesting conversation where he spoke about just how different kinds of voices, not different kinds of people, but different kinds of voices. Some were shouts and screams, some were hushed whispers, some were whimpers. Different kinds of voices inhabited this book. And not only do you have different kinds of voices inhabiting this book, you do have different people from a diverse range of social backgrounds. Now, do you want to talk about how you went about creating and bringing in those different voices, and perhaps what kind of voices were left out in spite of all your efforts?
I went back to trying to see what is in 2005 as to what are the different kinds of voices. And I think the kind of voices you have is one is of course the scream, which is in a marvelous essay by Vaibhav Saria, where he talks about I'm out and here's why. And that tells you the politics of the scream. Then there's also the more nuanced one, which is the voice of someone like Satya, who's a transgender person, who's a female to male transgender person. It's really nuanced because what Satya captures is he's a female to male transgender person and he's living his life as a male, but obviously he's never tied a lungi in his life. And so he's going to somebody's house and then this person says, hey, looking at him struggle to tie a lungi, and says, shall I help you tie a lungi? And the person helps him tie the lungi, and then at that moment he also feels that affirmation, the fact that he's seen as a man. And it's seen in this simple gesture of really tying the lungi as it were. Then there's of course a questioning voice as well, which is once again interesting because we're talking about parents, because we have this father who writes a letter to this group called Council Club in Calcutta and says, what is it about gay people? Do they always have multiple partners? Do they always have sex all the time? What is it about gay people? That's the kind of questioning voice which is there as well. And of course, Pawan responds to it in the voice of reason, but that's how it goes. Then there's looking at the range of experience, there's also the question of death. There's once again the voice by Devdutt Patnaik, who talks about the death of a gay man. And once again, it captures the reality of a period, of a time before maybe organized groups were really there or had massive outreach. Because you're talking about men who just meet each other, or maybe street corners, maybe end up having sex once, maybe a second time. And suddenly you find that the guy you had sex with 1, 2, 3 times is not there anymore. You go around asking everybody, everybody says actually he's not there. And then suddenly you find out that he's dead. You know? And so a range of these 5, 6 men go to his house, you know, to see that somebody who mattered as far as they were concerned is dead. And they go and try and grieve for that particular person. And see, he captures the complexity of, I mean, how do you grieve for someone when you're not acknowledged as a presence in that person's life? How do you grieve for someone when you, how do you go to the person's house? What do you describe yourself as? Who are you as far as the family is concerned?
And you know what I love about that particular story, just a quick interjection, was that it wasn't the typical story of this was my partner of the last 10 years. It wasn't. It was I met him once. That's it. And you know, this is a particular kind of story that is and so particular to queer life. Of what the intimacy of this short encounter means to queer people. Because partly because for the longest time you imagined that it was all you would ever have. That actually life would be a series of these kinds of fleeting encounters. Partly because that sense, because your automatic notions of what it means to love and be with people don't stretch over decades. You don't think in forever. You just don't, because you never saw the movies growing up, and you never read those books, and people like you didn't live forever, and you could think of one person who was 60, and so, but it wasn't necessarily a depressing thought. You know what I mean? When you say it this way, it sounds like a little sort of tragic kind of moment, but it wasn't. But
it was the idea of how your life would.
It was the idea that if this is love, and this love is as valid, then even for that fleeting encounter, you go to that man's funeral. You go to Kay's funeral, because what it was at that moment was real. It was true. And holding on to that moment of truth was just as important as living with someone for 20 years. And I've always loved that about queer life. I've always loved the equivalent importance to the moment as to the lifetime. And I think that, and to celebrate it, to take the death of that person as seriously. That story, it always struck me. And how when we both read it, we were like, yeah, this is actually, you need to go. And when I read it, I was like, this happened to me, I will go. So,
one more was the mystic rose. I think you should just talk about it. She comes to what is
absolutely. Yeah. I have to read that. I have to read this back out because one of my single favorite pieces in the book is by Maya Sharma. And Maya Sharma is coincidentally also the first queer person I ever met in India. Ever. She was, I had just come back from college and I had gotten out of prison and I went to her, and she was a labor union activist with the Indian Mazdoor Sabha in Delhi. And she had an office behind, just off the IIHS hotel on Barakhamba Road. And so she said, come meet me in Bengali streets. And I was like, I am going to meet a gay Indian person. It was this moment, and it was this amazing thing. And out comes this 5'2" white-haired woman being like, hi. And it was just, visually, it was just nothing I could have imagined, right? And she was just incredible. This 50 years, she was like, my God, the men labor union activists don't let me use the computer in the office. Like, it was like, that's our conversation at Bengali Streets. And she wrote this incredible book that Yoda published later called Loving Women, Being Lesbian in Unprivileged India. But one of the stories that we took from here was called, She Came to the World of Spirits. Right? And it's about these two women in Gujarat, in a small town, hours from anywhere, somewhere in Kutch. And there are these two women, they live together in the village, they have a child, they raise it, and they're together. And no one ever uses the word lesbian, there's no queer, there's no gay, there's nothing. There are just these two women who live together and raise a child. And so Maya's like, what is this like? How do you explain this life? There's no flag, there's no slogan, there's no parade. Here are these two women in this village, in traditional village India that is intolerant and backward, historical, etc. And so then she goes and she says, who is she to you? And the classic question of love and belonging, who is she to you? And I'll just read you the reply. Their names are Hasina and Fatima. She goes, lifting her smiling brown eyes, Hasina shared the moment of her first meeting with Fatima in a whisper. She said, I was standing by the well in the Kacheri compound one day, all dressed up in red. At that time, he, and she always used the word he to talk about Fatima, he emerged from the well and told me, I love you. He came for me disguised as a woman and cast on me a magical spell I cannot explain. I cannot live without her. Okay, so now there's a full, like there's no, and what I love about it is that there's no need to resolve this. Like there's no tension here. Him, her, he, I cannot live without her. She has not come from your and my world. She has come from the world of spirits. That was that. And if you asked anyone in the village, they would say, Hasina, she lives with Fatima. Who is Fatima? She takes care of Hasina. It was this sense, of writing this other mystical, not mystical, but it just felt so plain. In fact, it was like plain speaking. It was simple and it was easy, and it was the richness of that kind of diversity of voice. And it also, I think, brought back a lot of those early tensions when the queer movement was going, which is, do you need to have a voice at all? Should you have a voice? Should you have a name? Do you have a name? And that was the thing, and there was a whole lot of tension saying, if you speak now, we will lose what little space we have. So the line used to always be, Khamoshi mein bhi bahut jagah. And you would hear it, and it was an undeniable inevitability of it. So part of putting this out there was a conscious knowledge that we were breaking safe spaces. We were breaking, not breaking safe spaces, but we were breaking something. Something had to break. And many people, we discuss, Akshay would say, Masti nahi ho pai, laundebazi nahi ho pai, you know, Masti ko naam de doge, Masti ge ho jayega. This will break, these spaces in silence will break. But the problem is, Khamoshi also had these really harsh limits. Right? Because it was, and the privilege to have silence was also very powerful. Like, you couldn't have Khamoshi if you were Hitler. You couldn't have Khamoshi if there was no space in the house to go to. You couldn't have Khamoshi if you couldn't escape. So it was all, but this was also like, what was this? Is this silence? It's not silence. Is it speech? I don't know if it's speech, but it was this reminder to us that there isn't this one story about identity, coming out, politics, naming. There isn't that's what you do. You grow up, become gay, come out, declare it, and live a certain kind of life. That there were all these other ways. The tolerance looked more complex. And that kind of diversity of voices that I really loved. I think the voices that we lost or that we couldn't get were the voices that were at this point just unable to speak. Voices of there was this, at the same time we were doing these collections of testimonials and documentations of extreme violence. Extreme, horrific violence that found their way as affidavits into the court case but never found their way into the book. And we couldn't, partly because it was, the book needed to keep that balance between celebration and protest. It needed to give people some ground to stand on. So there were many stories. There were stories that we couldn't ask for. I think that it's not that we didn't get that. It's we couldn't ask for that. We couldn't. I think we talked about. We couldn't go to people and say, bear this. Bear this burden. Bear this burden to tell the story of what happened to you, so that it may be documented. We couldn't. Actually, when we went back for the case, there was a different conversation because there was an immediate need to bear that burden. For this, it didn't feel right. So there were many stories we knew that we didn't write. There were many, 2005 was the time when, I think suicide there was right before that. So that whole spate. There was a year, I think 2003, I don't know that, in Canada, there were, these articles about this and that. And there was a spate of 8 suicides in 6 months. 8 women couples who left notes saying we are being forcibly married and parted, so we are dubbing, and 8 of them, and they just came one after the other, after the other, after the other, and what we have that reflected in the book is through a study of violence on queer women that thankfully at that point had come out of TIS. But you won't find that in the narratives, right? You can't bear that kind of weight. And so I do think that there were many voices that were at this point unable to speak. There were voices. There was also fear. One of the ones that did get written, that we didn't ultimately carry, was a piece that talked about harassment in a Delhi college. And we wanted to carry it very badly. But the college was named. Like it was named, it was just there, and so, and one of the things, so we went back and Arvind said, you know what will happen is legally this is defamation. Because it's an accusation of criminal action against the named college. And Yoda was an initial starting press, the only press going to publish a book like this. There was nothing, there was no protection, there was 377. And the question was, can you fight them? And it was like, nothing will get read in the book except that piece. Nothing will get written about in the media except that piece. So what we went to the author, we went back and said, just don't say the name. Say everything else. And say the red brick college on the corner. Say the college named after the gospel saint. And it just ends like, come on.
The college with no public name.
The college with, exactly, the college with no public name on the front. Say whatever, and
college that tells.
The college that dare not, actually that's your suggestion even then. He said college that dare not speak its name. And everybody will know what you're talking about. But he pulled the piece because he accused us of betraying what had happened to him and the testimony of that bias, which was fair, but again, we didn't feel like we could take that risk. We didn't feel like we could take that burden.
To get to the question of voices which are not covered, I think that's a point which, you look at the book itself, the fact that it captures some voices, like even the death and the grieving issue we talked about. There's a range of experiences out there which are obviously not all covered. So the range of stuff which needs to be covered or should be covered. So I think in some sense, that's a continuing project, something which hopefully people can take up and people should take up and cover different voices which need to be covered. Maybe I just want to add one voice which I feel should be covered, which recently we were just doing a little bit of work on, which is getting back to the entire issue of the issue of two women who commit suicide. And that's once again something which I think we've not spent enough time thinking about, we've not spent enough time in some sense remembering or memorializing. And it's a very, very important point. Almost all these cases, and you speak to any of the lesbian activists and LGBT activists in the country, they will tell you that these cases of two women who commit suicide, and when they commit suicide, they invariably leave behind a suicide note. And one case recently in Calcutta, which was this joint suicide of two women, Swapna and Sujeta, and this group in Calcutta called Sappho for Equality followed that issue up. And once again, the potential for the story or the importance of the story to be told is all there, because the image which was captured with Sappho, which was captured actually by the police photographer, is of these two women lying together with their hands around each other and with their sari connecting each other and looking completely peaceful. And they left behind a suicide note which basically talks about their love for each other and makes one point. It says that if we are alive, we'd like to go to another country. If we are dead, we'd like to be buried together or burnt together. We'd like to be together. And what was so moving for me, what was so tragic actually, was the fact that neither of the families chose to claim those two bodies. Those two bodies remained unclaimed till the very end. And finally they were disposed in terms of, I don't know how they were disposed, but normally bodies are not claimed. Then the bodies are used, they're taken for medical, they're used for medical purposes, a range of other things, because they are claimed bodies, nobody wants these bodies. So what does it mean for a family in death to say that we don't want to claim the body of our daughter? And that's once again, it's a very important, once again, I don't think the stories to be told, but I think memories to be preserved, and things to be remembered. Just as Devdutt remembered the death of those two, of that one man in the fleeting encounter, the story of these two women, and not just these two women, the number of women who committed suicide. So how do we continue to remember and write the stories of cases such as this, or issues such as this, or people such as this? So really the point is, I think it's really, if you look at the book, it's really about stories who are in many senses very ordinary people, but they're moved by something extraordinary, which is their love for each other, or is their passion for each other. Some strange passion which takes them out of the ordinary and makes them extraordinary. And it's that story which I think needs to be told. And this book makes one part of the attempt. I think there are many more such attempts which really can and should be made. So if you ask me what it leaves out, I say a whole world. And a whole world is really
many words.
So what is it about the written word then, as a form, that makes it fundamentally different from something that's more visuals, something film, that's any kind of visual art, and the place of that, the written word in movements. How much of your book, for instance, drew on the movement before you? How much do you think it helped shape what came after? And what is the place of the written word in itself in larger movements, in larger kinds of organizing?
That's fine. Someone once said to me that what the queer movement in India needs is 2 good films. That's it. And the 2 good films will do much more than 20 good books. And it's hard in India to disagree with that. Huh? The power of cinema and of the visual in India is quite tremendous, you know. But the films we got were fire and Dostana. And that's, in that sense, you feel a little bit on surer ground in this form. But I think that, you know, I've always been very moved, for example, by the Zuban does a fantastic series called Poster Women, which is a history of 20 years of posters from the women movement. And the impact of that is a very different kind of impact. So I think the middle ground for me is, and I think the unexplored space in queer politics is actually queer popular culture. And is queer popular culture that is visual and emblematic and powerful and direct and quick. Because I think books do very different things to movements. I think books have the luxury, the moment to reflect, but also to change what they reflect. They're not just mirrors. Right? There are moments where, I mean, in this, we were very clear that we didn't want to document what was happening. We wanted to push and allow something new to emerge. Books allow you space for language. They allow you space for words. You know, and it's one of those things where when you see the 377 judgment in the Nas course, in the Nas case, one of the things that I love about that judgment is Arvind's favorite line in it, which is that Nehru said that words are magical things. You know, and Che Guevara said ideas are also weapons. You know, and I think that there was a really one moment when Che Guevara once wrote a letter to the New York Times from deep inside the jungles in Mexico, and they asked, and there was a picture author standing there, machine gun bullets strapped to his chest, holding a bazooka, and he's written a letter. Right? It's like one of those things where you have a very irate, like Punjabi Hausa. It's like, I'm going to write a very strongly worded letter in protest. Right? And so he wrote this, and sometimes someone asked him, they said, how do you write a letter sitting holding semi-atomic guns, doing armed resistance against the state? And he said, ideas are also weapons. And so I think for me, very much the point about what books can do is that books can endure and bear a burden that's beyond documentation and reflection. Books can create. Books can allow you, and they can create in multiple ways. They can allow you something that is not just sensory, but sensory over a period of time, and that allows you to immerse, go back, look again. They can hand you this repository of ideas that you can keep going back to. And I think every time I feel like we wrote or put together a good book is because it's still here. And 8 years later, there's no need, this is not current. It doesn't, you know what I mean? The world in many ways has changed, but there's something about its words that allow it a life. And I think that the visual is very powerful in affect. The visual is very powerful in
evoking emotion.
But poetry is like that. So it's not just text and visual. Poetry is like that. What poetry does, what music does, what the visual does is, you don't know why, but it changes something inside you. It makes you feel something. This comes in when you have the feeling. This comes in and tells you what to do with the feeling. So I've always thought about it in that way. I don't think you can. I think the visual and the poetic and the affective makes you want to read. And when you read, it tells you what to do. It tells you how to think. That's what I learned about. That maybe because I'm an academic.
So it has been 8 long years. How would you do this differently if you had to start from scratch today? If there was no Because I Have a Voice before, how would you do this differently? I mean, the world has changed, queer politics has changed, what queer people want has changed. How would you do it?
Would you do it at all?
Maybe I wouldn't do it. I'd say that somebody else needs to do it. That would be my response. Because the world has changed and it needs to be captured by different people. And I really think there's space and importance for that. And this has been done at some point in time. I think other people will take it forward in different ways.
There is then that new generation that I think all of us of a particular generation are aware of. What strikes you as being new about this generation? What's different about the form? What's different about the politics? What's different about these are the League of Oldie Goldies reflecting on the
Seriously, man.
yeah.
Maybe one thing is that I think when we read out the initial part, right, there's a certain fragility to our freedom. I think the sense of fragility has long since disappeared, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
The sense of confidence which people have, which is quite, I think, quite fun. I mean, we were just talking about in the context of this. I think in Bangalore there was an event organized by this group called Queer Campus. I don't know if any Queer Campus members are here. And they organized it in this place called the Vishranti Nidai. And they had a range of performances, and they were quite out there in terms of, skimpy clothes, performances, the range of stuff and all that. It's all fine. The only problem was it was all done in a space which was belongs to the nuns. And
Belongs to the nuns?
Nuns. It's a nun establishment as it were.
Strong point. It's a strong establishment.
That's the point, because the nuns were like, they said, they're really offended. They said, it's horrible. People have been calling us up from the last couple of days and telling us that we are just like you. And so it's horrible. How can they say these things? And we were thinking about it that for us it might have occurred that, nuns, maybe we should take them into consideration. But I mean, there's a certain way, certain sense of, confidence, which I think is quite enduring in its own way. So it's quite charming.
It's palpable. I think there is a, and it's palpable in many. I don't think it's palpable just for queer people. I think it's palpable all across. I was talking to someone, especially after the recent events post-December in Delhi. I was on a bus with a friend, and she's a woman of my generation, let's say, and we were both going. And she looked at this girl on a Delhi bus, standing there, and she was just smiling. So I looked at her and I said, "Why are you smiling?" And she said, "Look at her." So what do you mean? She said, "Just look how she stands." And I said, and I looked at her and I was like, and clearly this moment was happening that was going straight past my head, and I was like, I'm just not seeing it. Like, what is it? And she said, she's just, and then she just said, she should just look for two. And I got what she was saying. This girl will stand in a bus in January, this January, not any January, this January in Delhi, with an air of just certainty. She said, I can never stand like that. She said, it's not that I feel threatened. She said, I don't know, it's not in me to stand like that. I was never, and what is amazing about it is that, and I think that there was this, and and she said, that's why I'm smiling. I'm smiling because I look at her and say, good, because I took the same bus to college every day. But it was that, and that's the way I feel about this generation of young people, is that there is a sense of self, an unquestioned sense of self, that is remarkable to watch. That is just, and it is this way in which it's exactly that moment you wanted, because everything you wanted as a queer person, in some way, was the right to forget. Even if you forgot momentarily or a week, just to forget your sexual identity, because you didn't have to think about it all the time. Because that's, the way power works. And you don't think of your caste if you're Brahmin. But you never forget your caste if you're not. And that you don't think of your gender if you're a man. But you never forget it if you're a woman. And it was that, so forgetting, this generation, in moments, forgets. And they become whole. I think they become people. They don't become gay people, they just become people. And I think there's a way in which there's a real sense of wonderment about that. The flip side of it, because as you age, you have to be slightly cranky. Otherwise it doesn't matter. The flip side of it is that it's a generation that seems to have no sense of history. But I hate saying it, it sounds so school-mommy. But there is a way that every once in a while, I just find it kind of bizarre, but that's interesting. I might talk and I'm well aware of this, right? It's not a generational thing. But every once in a while I look, and I think what's catching us by surprise is when this book was written, you could largely actually say that most public queer people thought more or less along the same lines about politics, and you just cannot say it now. And what's happened now is, someone asked me what has changed after Delhi High Court judgment in 2009. What's changed is you can now openly dislike Puerto Rico.
Right.
And you no longer have to pretend that there are solidarities that hold you together simply because of your sexual identity.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful thing. It also means that there are crazy, there are opinionated, right-wing leaning Hindutva gay men. And you're suddenly like, yeah, you and I do not have a personality, let's be very clear. My personal, I don't do. But so I think that, there's a way in which I think we took the radicalness of queer politics for granted. We took the fact that queer politics would be progressive for granted. We took the fact that we would come from these positions and we would challenge structure and challenge dominance. And you can't take it for granted because queer politics doesn't have to be egalitarian, and it doesn't have to be inclusive, and it doesn't have to be progressive, and that doesn't make my version of queer politics any more right. I'm just saying that from where I stand, it's a bit of a struggle because I think that sometimes you see the replications of precisely the kind of casteism and sexism and patriarchy and classism that this intersectional position gave you a chance to fight. Right? There was in some senses, being queer was also a privilege because it allowed you a position where you saw this system and you could fight it. But that came out of partly an experience of being outside. The truth is, black people are racist, and Muslims are communist, and Dalit people are casteist, and Hijras are homophobic. And so the easy solidarities don't line up. And so I worry sometimes, in a very grandmotherly way, that the progressive potential of queer politics is this story that we still tell ourselves. And so sometimes I worry about it. And I think a lot of the new groups that I see are fantastic. And a lot of them that I see, they look so different from the groups that I was part of. I don't recognize them, but I don't have to recognize them, which is a good thing. So they will make their own way.
Okay. I'll ask one last question and then we'll open it up to everybody here. I'm glad you brought up Delhi in December last year. I thought it was really interesting that happened there was basically politics being lived on the street that also then led to certain changes in the law as it existed. So much about queer politics in India has had to do with questions of the law. Now, for me personally, I think the law is a great way. Knowledge of the law is a great resource to have. When you're confronted with just all kinds of oppressions. And the law is a great resource to have. But could you, both of you also, and you as a legal practitioner, also think about what the limitations of the law are, what the limitations of the law brings are, and what are the different forms, what are the different institutions that you'd like to see queer politics engage with in the future, if it's not just the law?
No, I think this question of the law comes up again and again. It's addressed in the book, and we still have to think and talk about what the law means. I think there's many ways one can answer this question. One opinion, of course, is that the law is straightforward lead to violence, and the law is straightforward problematic. So then, no progressive person should have anything to do with the law. And that's an opinion that I think makes a lot of sense in many ways as well. It's not something completely discount. But I think the point I want to stress is that there are many ways or many kinds of law one needs to think about. I mean, more philosophically as the way we think about the law. One is the law is linked to violence, but others can you think of law differently. And I just want to talk about one small story for a little bit, which is the founding myth of the original law, which is the story of Antigone in Greek philosophy, in Greek theatre, where the idea of Antigone is really the fact that she's told by Creon that you can't bury your brother. That's the king's law. That's the law that says you can't bury your brother. Antigone says, I will bury my brother. And she said, I will bury my brother because I will not obey a man-made law. I obey a higher law. That's the point she makes. So the point I really want to ask is when we talk about the law, what is the higher law? 377 is the lower law. We talk about a higher law, which is what inspires or moves me at least when we think of the law. And the higher law to me really comes from not the Constitution in some ways is a governance text as well, there's no two ways about that. But there's certain ideas in the Constitution. Just link up to a certain kind of a radical politics and radical thinking. And so there are two ideas. One is the idea of dignity in the Constitution. Where does the idea of dignity really come from? And how does it find its place in the Constitution? And once again, I just want to trace it back. I don't think we should look at the idea of dignity as without a history. If you look at the history of the idea of dignity, I'll link it back to two people as well as India, which is both Mahatma Gandhi as well as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And if you look at Ambedkar's story, his entire life was a struggle against practices of indignity and humiliation. There's one really moving story where he talks about the fact that as a child, when he was in college, when he was in school, when he goes to school, the teacher will throw a gunny sack and say, use it as a gunny sack. And that's the experience of indignity from which he comes. That's why the notion of dignity is so important and powerful as far as the new constitution is concerned. And similarly, if you look at the story of Gandhi and you look at the why experiments were true. I mean, it's really the story of being thrown off the railway station is something we all know. But after he was thrown off the railway station, what he says is that he got onto a coach, to take the journey forward. And the people, the owner of the coach told him, you can get into the coach, but you sit in the front out there, where the coachman sits. And then you pay the entire fare and you can carry on that way. So he goes and sits there. They're sitting there, the guy from inside comes out and says, I want to smoke. Hey Sammy, which is Swami, which is a derived term for feminine. And then says, hey Sammy, sit on this guy's side and throws him another guy's side. Gandhi says, I will not go. He just holds on to that idea, that's why he's taking it. But once again, what illustrates it is how important the notion of dignity is. And so really what I think the queer movement has done is reclaim that dignity for ourselves. And the Delhi High Court judgment is a marvelous illustration of how the idea of dignity, which is so intrinsic to the idea of who it means to be within this context Indian, applies as equally to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender person. So I mean that's really the notion of law, the idea of law, which I would defend and say that's the idea of law which we need to protect and take forward. And so we critique the notion of the law such as this understanding on the basis of what we would call in some sense a higher law. And the higher law, once again, I don't want to put it in the frames of Article 21 because there's lots of points in Article 21, which is the right to life, actually goes against the interests of a large majority of people. But the notion of dignity, which is there in Article 21, or which can be read in Article 21, is something we will defend and we will work.
I mean, after that one, I think that there's a difference between decriminalization and the law as a space for acceptance in the future. So, I think for it to be a criminal offense, that was one argument that I think where there was a necessity in which it actively prevented life. Would I go back after the 377 judgment through a legal route for other kinds of inclusion within the law? I'm not sure. And I think for me that distinction is an important one because there is a history of the women's movement's engagements with the law. There is a history of going to the court on dowry, on sex-selective abortion, on sexual violence, on rape, and I was involved personally. We started many groups in the campaigns on the new criminal violence laws, right? And lobbying around those violence laws. And there is a way in which I agree very much with Arvind's notion of dignity. I'm not certain you find dignity as often in the courts as you would like. And I think there is a way, partly because, I was in the courts of 377, while the same courts were ordering slum evictions in cities where I worked as a housing rights activist. And so for me, the court was both this space of tremendous joy and tremendous anger, and those two experiences were never separated from each other. And so I think that for me, I think that 377 at that point was a strategic choice. I don't think we could have fought any other battle. I don't think we went because the law is an easier battle to fight than a public campaign. It's easier battle to fight than a public campaign when you have 6 square people you can come who will go on TV, who will use their full names, who are up to their parents, who can step up. And I think it was possible. I mean, I think that, to me, the history of deciding to go to court, which was never a single moment decision. It was also like, movements don't have plans. They just happen. They happen to you, you happen to them. But to decide to back the case was very much a fact saying, look, this is as good a fight as any. It's only one fight. We kept saying time and time again, we don't believe that winning will end homophobia. We don't believe that the law, the piece I wrote in the book is called The Limits of the Law. But it's an important fight. I don't think we can put a, I don't think you should put a hierarchy of beliefs, and I don't think you should put a hierarchy of strategies. I think you put them next to each other, and the battle we fought was in the court. But you know, it's only one of many battles that have to be fought, and there are many things it will not fix, and will not solve, and will not touch, but that's fine. Because there is nothing that will touch all of them. There are no silver bullets. There are no single, you know, there's no, if you press this button instead of that one, you get all this impact and solve it all. Everything is partial and fragmented. It's like that series, Ship of Theseus, that last movie when the guy comes back, and see the movie, he comes back to his grandmother.
Give out the story, Gautam.
So it's a thing, and she says in the end something wonderful, and he's like, oh, I tried to do this political activist thing, I tried to make change, and she smiled at him, she said, it was a very bad English translation, very annoying. She said in Hindi, she said, itna hi milta hai. You know, and they translate as this is as good as it gets, which is not what she said. She said, this is how much you get. Itna hi milta hai. And I always thought of the law as that, as never big capital L powerful institutional authority. I saw it as one more akhara to have a fight in, you know, and it was a fight worth fighting.
Thank you. Before I hand it over to the audience, there is a Yoda desk behind you. This book is part of a series on sexualities that Gautam has edited, that Yoda came out with, and there will be, I'm sure, other Yoda books out there. But I'm throwing it out to the audience now. Any questions, comments, clarifications?
Hi.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Gautam. I'm a lawyer. I work at DLF. And so, when we speak about this whole new generation thing, I find myself like stuck in between everything right now. Because like I came into queer politics reading queer and because I have a voice and everything, and imagined or expected that queer inherently is liberating and then, you know, intersectional and all that. And then I look back at the reality around me and I'm like, okay. So for me, what is really important is to kind of contextualize a book like this to the current day situation. And I think when I say current day situation, I want to be a little more explicit. Because you log onto Planet Romeo and you have these profiles that says, no, these girlies, enemies, and whatnot, like, you know, like, and then that kind of like epitomizes all kinds of bigotry. And then I'm like, and this is something, I mean, you can't, like, how do I say that you cannot be casteist and gay, you cannot be classist and gay, without having this position of like, okay, like, your queer politics is different from mine. No, I want to say that these are connected injustices that we are fighting, and if you cannot see the larger picture, then you are terribly wrong. And that is where I find the importance of a book like this in the current day context a lot more, you know, like really immediate. So, yeah, it's just a reflection. How do we even engage with the kind of groups that are coming up, multiple Facebook groups, celebration of marriages, and like, I don't even know where to start with it, and how do I engage with like re-release of book because I have a voice maybe.
A third edition, do you want that?
I think it's a tough question, you know, and I think the thing to think about it is that it's not a question you just asked in sexuality movements. It's a question that labor movements ask, it's a question that movements around religion ask, it's a question that development movements ask, it's a question of how. But I think that you have to read. The only thing I can say is that what's clear to me now is that this moment is not like that moment. That's all. And it takes a while for that to happen, which means we have to start understanding this moment. Which means actually this shouldn't be your reference. Because even if it feels current, it's because it's holding you back, is what I would say. Because I think what's necessary at any political moment is to understand what are the logics by which silencing happens now. What are the logics by which connections are broken now? Right? The way we were silenced in 2000 is not the way the silence happens now. Now you have a different kind of appropriation. Right? Now you have a different kind of, you know, people will not, in many cases, people will not openly be homophobic to your face. Right? Now you actually have these very strange interconnected oppressions where gay people feel free to be sexist towards the feminine gay men. Now you will have the complete divorce of the mixed spaces where actually queer women, trans people, and gay men actually come together. But I think that those, then those spaces are, so I think that the challenges are to look at this moment on its own terms. To actually figure out and say, it's not that you're not seeing these connections, it's look back and say, what do the connections look like now? Actually, maybe we're not seeing the connections. Maybe the connections don't look like that anymore. And maybe the way in which caste functions with sexuality is actually very different than it did when we were having gay. And maybe that's the problem. So maybe the disjuncts are, and that's why I sort of hesitate to say something about the new generation, because actually at some point, I don't feel like I read this moment anymore. Right? So I don't feel like I could do a book now. So I would say exactly the same thing as Arvind. Not just because I think new people should do it, because I don't have an instinctive sense that I can read the moment. And which is great, because time passes and this thing goes. So I think the question, the way I would think about it right now is to really, because there are people who get the connections and start there. Start there, and the one thing that I think that I was realized is that it may not be the people who you expect to get it. So look in unexpected places. You may actually find it far away from queerness and LGBTness and queer people, far away. You may find it in a totally different space, in a construction workers union, which actually instantly gets it. And maybe the connection, maybe we made this connection via sexuality, because at that moment, other movements use sexuality to question themselves. This is not that moment. Sexuality has become something else. Which means now maybe we need to look at work, maybe we need to look at labor, maybe we need to look at religion. Maybe it's looking at Muzaffarnagar and Khap Panchayats and will allow us to come up with a progressive intersectional politics. Because there's no reason why the intersectional politics has to come from sexuality. Let it come from somewhere else. And I think that means we have to start looking somewhere else.
One small point to that is I think taking on those points, the number of figures even in contemporary times who embody certain intersectional politics, and just that we haven't really looked closely enough, I think. And the figure to me who is really, really remarkable is Chelsea Mann. What a remarkable story. Here this person who's born Bradley Manning, and then she does something remarkable. She exposes the entire record as far as the US military is concerned, for which she gets 27 years in jail. 27 years. And she's there for almost 2 years, I think, in solitary confinement, for 23 or 24 hours. And what is her motivation? And you read her statement, it's really remarkable. She says, when I see those Iraqis, the way she sees it, they're human beings, much like I am. And here's a person who in the rest of the United States doesn't see the Iraqis as human beings. Here's this person who sees the Iraqis as human beings. And you can possibly draw a connection between that and her being transgender, because the remarkable thing she does is she does this act, and the day she is convicted, she comes out with the other things, and actually I'm Chelsea Manning, please call me Chelsea. Now. So she does these two remarkable acts of truth telling. She talks about who she is, and she talks about people other than her who are as important as she is. And I think of that a culture which is so blank, where you are supposed to talk about anybody, the Iraqis, other than, and this remarkable way where she's putting her life at risk, other than Chelsea Manning. So I mean, there are these figures, I just don't think we've looked hard enough.
I had my own struggle with this book, reading in Boston, Bombay with a rainbow flag on it and people staring at you.
I'm sorry. Is it better?
So it was really tough to read and go around. But what you said, I think one thing which was a recent realization watching samples, watching a black standing by the conservatives in the US, and looking at from that side to looking at Hindu activists being queer and being a part of the system. Is a reflection of somewhere inclusivity, but it may not be at a larger level, but it is somewhere sort of coming to the idea and accepting that you are on the side of the right and is also not wrong. So I think that's something, whether it is one of the things which in the movies gaze for socialism. I think that's done. We are done with that stage. So that's something. There is a next level of looking at where we are probably having round there around. So which is not possible, but surely can something come to that. That is some sort of comment on that. And I don't know, there were certain portions of the book which I think I have a deja vu, saying that I saw it in the movie or in certain movies, but not as a whole. But it is still not collected as a part. The way the two suicides have been committed, and then there's this guy who meets for one night. I don't remember which movie was it, but it was there in the cinema. But it's just not the way it didn't come out, the way it should be.
I have two questions actually. One is I entirely agree with you on where intersectionality has to work and where the critique has to come, and I find in order to be more radical and more questioning the queer politics, I'm not just passing this burden on to the queer movement, or it's like I define myself with the queer movement, but I feel now it is necessary for the queer movement and the politics to radically question marriage and family as institutions, and for me that is where a lot of things. It's that those two institutions have not been sufficiently questioned and sufficiently challenged, and that's where the problems lie. So, and the second question is about asexuality in India as a movement and as a community. It's entirely invisible, and how do we bring in, and it's if they can find voice somewhere, it's only with the queer. It's never though the sexuality itself is questioned there, and we haven't gone into the questions of sexuality yet. This is something that is taken for granted, and it's like an entire movement is built around it as if this is something there that is with us for in all our adult lives, and asexuality as a movement, as an orientation questions it. How are we going to bring this into India and make it visible?
Marriage. So I hope you will answer this as well, because we've had too many facts about this. We need to get off this lightly. So marriage is complicated. So I have a very easy feminist critique of marriage. So I personally am very resolved about it. I don't want it. I'm happy without it. And I have a clear institutional critique of it. So if the gay movement goes marriage heavy, I would step aside and and I think that there is one part of queer politics, because it comes so strongly from feminism, has always had this critique, right? And it always has done so. But I think that the complication is this. I think the complication is, and I've struggled with this because I know a range of married people who live very queer lives, and straight, gay, technically, whatever, that whole round of it. Right? Because I think the question really comes back to is, when you critique an institution, how do you do so? You can reject it. The question is, can you critique it from within? Can you undo it from within? Can you embody it so differently that it loses its meaning? Now, on marriage, I would tend to say no. The problem is that in IIHS, I work on housing, and I work with municipalities. And all my friends in the housing rights movement say, you can't fix them from within. The state will, as an institute, critique of marriage, critique of state. They follow very parallel directories. So I find myself constantly defending my choice to work within the state, to try and not undo it, but to lessen its footprint, right? And working closely within that system has really challenged my own personal things on marriage, because as have the experiences of people around me on what it means to live and work in very different kind of marriages. So I know where I am, but I have to say that I have a really hard time drawing neat lines on this the way I used to. I still have a very clear position on marriage. And I think it's for the better that it has gotten more difficult for me. So what I'm trying to think through now is to keep a critique of the linking of marriage to the institution of the state, and to its primacy as the only legitimate way to live a life. That I'm solidly behind, right? So when I just made a leave policy, we all went to fight and said, maternity and paternity, the words maternity, so I'm very proud of our leave policy because the words maternity and paternity don't appear. Right? We say primary and secondary caregiver. And primary and secondary caregiver are completely independent of kinship and marriage, which means it can be you and your neighbor, or you and me, in case you would like to do that. It can be you and me, it can be, any, and the principal objection there was not, oh, we need to include queer people. It was marital status cannot be in any way determined to my right to leave for my caretaking for my child. And whether it's biological or adopted, and we fought for that, and we established it here. And that to me is my politics around marriage. That if marriage to you symbolizes something of value, feel free. But it cannot be the way the state recognizes rights. Now, the counter argument, of course, is that as long as the state recognizes it, we're fooling ourselves to think that the social thing. And so I can critique and counter-critique this in my head like a ping pong paper. So I see where you're coming from. I'm just, and I'm pushing back only to say that I think the productive thing to do for me is to try and see what it means to construct new kinds of relationships that give support and intimacy that can take other forms, right? So I have a notion of family. I have a notion of growing old. I have a commitment to a certain set of friends that I will grow old with. None of them are my romantic partners who are separate, from that. And the 4 or 5 of us think of ourselves as a queer family. We can't say that because one of them hates the word family, so she doesn't use it. So we call ourselves whatever. But we have a certain set of commitments we make to each other, and they involve all of those things: sharing money, growing old, and saying that regardless of who we are, quote unquote, romantically involved with, our friendships are equivalent to our romantic relationship. That to me is my critique of marriage. It's living a life in which it's not just the institution of marriage, but it's the idea that romance or that kind of love is primary to friendship. And I don't agree with that. And I think that's a very queer, that comes from queer politics. To think of friendship as one of the highest forms of love is a way of imagining a different way to embody queer politics and sexuality. And asexuality comes from that because asexuality in some senses values affection and intimacy and separates it necessarily from physical desire. And I think that's a really important move. I mean, I have actually just begun to take seriously what asexuality means, personally. It's a very personal thing. When we were doing this, it was totally off our radar. And because it was so far-gaping, we just did, all we wanted to do was desire. So the idea of pulling back at that point was beyond us. But so I think that's that. I think that I have a, and Mario and I have debated and disagreed and talked about marriage for a very long time. And every time someone in our friend circle has gotten married, there has been this moment where everyone has taken stock. And I think the one convincing, one of my closest friends in the world got married, what she said is, I don't believe this is the only option. I don't believe this is superior. I don't believe that this is etc., etc. And I will recognize and fight the recognition from the state, but I will do it within this structure. And I think that's a completely valid political location. It's not mine.
Can I interrupt there?
Sure.
There's a danger in gossip. I mean, that is what I'm pointing out. It's the more and more we gossip as a political movement, and more we are into it. We are just escape I used to get on with it.
You're right. Absolutely. And every political position we take,
the reason why we take the opinion we're putting forward seriously is because you can all these issues we're talking about, right? These 2 women committing suicide. What is it around? It's around the issues that they're being pressurized into marriage. It's around the issues that the families are taking. So family and marriage have always been seen in a certain way. And you're right, it does communicate a very different perspective. And I think the challenge is how do you visualize this violence and take it seriously? And that's the big challenge. And the points I'm not too sure in terms of, as Gautam was saying, is the way forward in terms of rejecting the institution, or is it in terms of critiquing the institution? Now, how do you relate to that particular institution? Because we also have the case of, we have the case of families of LGBT persons where we've been very supportive, of their children in terms of like the 377 case. What we saw at the Supreme Court level is we had this petition by 19 parents of LGBT persons. And they were making the point that, as far as we're concerned, we know the law better than anybody else because it impacts our families and our children most importantly. So we have a critique of this particular law because we come from the position of love as far as our children are concerned. I think there's these kind of families as well, as are those kind of families. So how do you how do you take a position in the middle of these kind of very conflicting ways in which the family actually works? Is really the challenge.
The one thing that I think anyone across queer circles is, here's my assumption again, in the queer politics I understand, is that even the people I know who get married have a very open critique of marriage. Like there's a very, its dominance across sexuality, its compulsarity, I think marriage is India's most violent institution, without any exception. Without any question, for anybody. And even, and it's and that is something that I think you're totally right, that the queer movement should really, as opposed to individual identity, take that as a structural argument that will again help us build a certain set of alliances that in many places are in place, that I think could really be much more vocal. On a sort of cross-intersectional shared critique of marriage, in the form that it exists today in India, all the theoretical possibilities aside, it absolutely should be more central, it should be more vocal. And on that, I think, regardless of our varying positions on that personally, like you put up on what it is in India today, it's basically a license to legitimate violence and murder. That's all it is. Perfect.
Yeah, so you spoke about what voice, because you said that if you had a voice, then what would you do with it? And you also spoke about intersectional politics. Now I want to know what do you think about representation, like the importance of representation in politics in India today? Because we have so the main point of a political party is representation, right? So in religion you have the Shiv Sena, or region and language you have the DMK, and you have various political parties like that. Do you think that representation as an LGBT party, because in the EU there are loads of political parties that take the stance on LGBT politics, and they think representation and in the government is really important, and the fact that laws need to be changed and stuff like that. So do you think representation could be a solution?
You mean political representation?
Political representation, like in form of parties that are made for the LGBT. Not only take LGBT as like a stance or have as a notion on LGBT, but actually made for the LGBT.
Yeah, I think the only way to answer that is to say that we have many identities and many ways of being. And at one level we might be gay or lesbian, but we also happen to be upper caste, lower caste. We also happen to have Muslim or Hindu range of, and we also happen to have a range of political and ideological positions. And clearly, I don't see the way forward today in India as being an LGBT party, because we run into precisely the same problems Gautam was highlighted, right? You have people within a party who say that Modi is the best thing to happen in this country. And we'll be absolutely clear that that cannot be the way forward. So I don't think the way forward can be an LGBT party. It has a way of party which takes on board LGBT concerns, but as a wider perspective. Really. For example, today I think at least the way I see that, I think both of you guys will agree, that the clear challenge facing India in the next coming 1 year is the 2014 elections. If that man comes to power, you can kiss the rest of any kind of politics goodbye. It's the most important challenge. And you will, of course, that many LGBT people will not realize or will not think that is the most important challenge. They think that no, how does it matter? Modi is great, he's fantastic, what's the problem? But then you have to have a wide, I don't think you can have a narrow lens of politics anymore. In fact, the one thing I think a post-377 move can only be that your politics has to encompass a range of issues. It just has to. And one concrete illustration of that might be, if you're asking what might one future direction be, it would be around the entire issue of a non-discrimination law, which takes seriously the discrimination faced in the private sector by people with disability, by people who are grounds of caste, on grounds of religion, as well as on grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity. And the concrete illustration is that you can't have a law. You can't advocate for a law for non-discrimination grounds of gender identity and sexual orientation. You won't get it. The only way you can do that is by taking on board a range of issues. Taking on board a range of issues, you're taking on board in a way in which you're going to take on board people who believe in that kind of politics. So you have to move from questions of identity to maybe questions of ideology or belief or doing politics.
That's interesting in one of the things you said, also giving us sort of disclaimer that of course you're an activist, but it's the context, right? We're able to see, and if you wrote this book in 2005, right? Okay, so if we, this is just a personal opinion, if we say that 2009, with the 377 verdict and all of that is India's equivalent to the Stonewall riots. So that was what, 4 years ago, right? And if you look at history, between Stonewall and now, there's been a good 40, 50 years. And you see where America is at the moment, that they're talking about marriage equality and which number of states. I find it fascinating, also slightly disturbing on some levels, that maybe the queer youth of today, like I said, without totally understanding, maybe not totally understanding the context of it, will also fight, say, for, say, a marriage equality within India. And I'm not quite sure whether we've done that whole gamut of growth yet as a queer movement. But since you guys have seen this from a sort of more of an overarching sort of perspective for a longer period of time, and seen the different, milestones, for lack of a better term that we've hit, what do you think the growth is? And if we were, and I don't know, maybe it's because I read a lot, and so I see, it's interesting to me, I was a history student as well, so I like seeing things from a sort of like a politicized perspective. So it's great to see the movement, say in America from Stonewall, and now to see how far they've moved. But if you were to compare it, because there is a lot of comparison that happens, where would you see we've reached?
I think there's a bit of danger in teleology, in these narratives that move from low to high, from early to late, from pre-modern to modern, and it's Hasina and Fatima. The question is, Hasina and Fatima in that narrative cannot exist, because you cannot move forward to Hasina and Fatima. Because Hasina and Fatima doesn't look like progress, it doesn't look like identity-based modernity, it doesn't look like gay bars on the street, it doesn't look like the Castro. And I think that's what actually is encouraging for me, that I don't see this as a historical trend. I lived for many years in the States, going back to Oakland School, and I actually find queer life in the States fairly terrifying in many ways, and not because there is a certain, it's weird, there are places I remember once when the judgment happened, and someone called me and said, from an American newspaper, and she said, what's it like to be gay in India? I said, well, what's it like to be gay in America? And she said, it's great. I was like, I said, where do you live? She said, San Francisco. I said, have you ever been to Wyoming? And it was a Buddhist question. I said, ask me what it's like to be an upper-class gay man in Delhi. That I can tell you. I mean, it's one of these broad kind of stroke kind of questions where America is not just Stonewall. So America actually is the 13th to the 25th century at the same time, just like India is. This country is radically progressive and utterly orthodox, if those words have any meaning, at the same time. I think that's the time that these are simultaneous timescales, and whether or not we. So the question to me that's exciting is not a question of are we going to catch up. The question is whether it does want to go. And there is and I'm not convinced that post-Stonewall reality. So I'll give an example of Philadelphia when I was around that area. 2 candidates ran for mayor, and one was black and one was white. And one of them had actually that wasn't there, and one of them had a very strong position on gay marriage. Okay? And a large number of the mainstream LGBT groups, human rights campaign, etc., all endorsed this guy because this is your political representation question, right? Here's a candidate who says, I will support gay marriage. And a whole set of secondary queer organizations, largely organizations of color. Of course, the Human Rights Campaign does not think of itself as a white gay organization, it just is de facto. Right? Sorry, that's a personal thing. But anyway, we used to call it the Human Rights Campaign Fund. And it's one of those, and they endorsed the other candidate who had a he didn't have a negative stance. He didn't take a stand for equality. He was like, riots, violence, don't get beaten, don't get jailed, very good, very good. But I'm not going to go out on a limb for you. And there was this whole tension on saying, why is the community not standing together? That's a classic question. Why aren't you endorsing the political representation who has to stand on gay rights? He said, that guy has a better stand on Medicaid, public housing, and welfare. And Medicaid, public housing, and welfare are queer issues. Because a third of homeless teenagers in America are on the street because they're gay. Right? And it's one of those things where, so it's like, there is a certain narrative of Stonewall history in the US, which is a deeply racialized and exclusive history of queer politics in that country. And to me, it's not queer politics, it is LGBT politics. It's exactly why, in that point, it's a story you wanted to, in some sense, move away from. And I don't need to sort of demonize America as a place. There is also a lot of movement. So, I think that for me, so the only answer for me your question is, I think that multiple timescapes are here. And we have to figure out our ways of thinking about sexuality. We have to figure out our ways of, and there is no one way that India will also find, right? In our own multiple contexts. And there will be those of us who will reject marriage, there will be those of us who will embrace asexuality, there are those of us who will do all of those things. But it's not a catch-up. And it's not a line.
Okay, to add to that though, that's what worries me because I don't know how many people will look at it that way and say, this is my own, this is my life. I have to make my choices.
Sure.
And I think a lot of, India places a huge importance on the family, the concept of family. I'm from a very large, very opinionated, very strong family. And it's always, I think it's, on one level, it's harsh to say I'm going to abandon my family altogether, but I think it's tough to say I'm going to really try very hard to work through it. But that's what worries me, because there are people that will always then say, I say this because I have, say, my siblings or my parents will say, do you think you'll get there?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know whether that's even where I want to be. So,
but what are they really saying? What they're saying to you is there a life you can lead where we will not be fearful for you? Will there be safety in your life? Will there be love in your life? Like, will there be, the questions they're asking are actually universal questions. In the end, at some point, and whether or not we have marriage rights, that anxiety about love, security, I think is sort of a familiar attribute, right? And I think the thing about is to go back to those primary questions. What we want is to live a life where we can determine the terms by which we choose different kinds of love, different kinds of support, different kinds of intimacy. It's not to reject that love is important. It's not to reject that relationships are important. Critique of marriage is not a critique of love. And that's very important. And I think the questions, the answer back is to say, I want the same things you want, but let's both be open to the fact that they may look like what neither of us expected them to look like when we started out. And my parents have gone through that journey. But it's interesting, my parents have gone through that journey with me and my sister. Right? Because my sister got divorced. And then suddenly it was a whole question of saying, and so both me and my sister are asking questions of saying, what does it mean to be with someone? What does it mean to belong? What does it mean to grow old? What does it mean to have love? What does it mean? And so, and it's funny, you get a divorce in the family, and suddenly the ease of marriage just goes. And in a really good way, you know what I mean? So suddenly everyone is open to this realm of possibilities. Everyone is open to then you could do this, then do that. And then my dad the other day said, what if you had 3 6-year relationships? That adds up to 18, that's pretty good. That's a lot of security and safety. You know what I mean? So everyone's kind of open to experimentation because the default has been taken aside. I think that's to be the important of marriage. If it's not a default, it's not going to feel as threatening even if some people choose it. And people will choose it. My fear in India is that we will go from 0 to gay marriage incredibly quickly. Why? Because you win in the Supreme Court, and then your mothers will tell you, if you're going to have a boyfriend, you better get married, because premarital sex is bad, whether it's gay or straight. And they're going to then have, Bharat matrimony will instantly launch, right? Because there's a whole market to it. And then as the wedding industry runs on, it will therefore just expand. And then, so it will become, because if marriage is the only legitimate form of desire and sexuality, the minute gay people reach acceptability, the only acceptability they will have is marriage. And we have exactly the same critique. And then people will say, "Hey, bichari, 29 saal ki lesbian, shaadi nahi hui, ladki nahi mili, and it's coming already. Why don't you find someone? Why don't you? So my fear is entirely that we will look far too quickly, like every kind of thing. And then in my head, I'm like, that may not be the worst thing. It's also like nothing, right? It may not be the worst thing. People are happily married, running around bored on a Sunday afternoon. It's something most people aspire, I've been deeply aspired to Sunday afternoon bored. With a cup of tea and a newspaper in certain countries in the globe, which are not last one, we should go.
So when you're talking about marriage, but the question is also the sense of security.
Yeah.
They're looking at religion. This one movie coming out, Love Jihad, whether it is associated now with Zafar Nagar, but that's a different thing. But the sense of security on the different levels, whether it's, and looking at from being an alternative sexuality to being the mainstream, and we are just like one. And for me, it's just like how do you sort of find your space in the system, where you are neither where you're institutionalizing marriage and coming from a different system where there's a constant question, when are you getting married and getting into that system, and then there's also a religious notion attached to it, then the state welfare schemes attached to it around the marriage, and that's where one of the victories of US were associated, that at least we get state welfare schemes and yeah. So how do you, so when you have to bring a broader correlation, and that connects to the previous question, when you have these larger questions and there are these Western interests, as a person who has been negotiating this, probably I'm asking more of a reflective question, how do you deal with such situations?
Isn't it also important, I would say, to just recognize the importance that a single narrative cannot embody everybody's experience? I mean, I think of these things, so I think of marriage, just marriage historically, and I think of family historically, and family in the 18th century is not what family is today, and family in the 19th century and marriage in the 19th century is not what family is, or marriage is today. And I think about what we think about as in terms of institutions. When we use that word, we have a certain kind of certitude around what it involves, right? A certitude about a normative way in which that relationship exists in our society. And I'm really, I think about, again, in our day and time, and historically, people who have chosen, who choose not to be in a marriage. Who are these people? These people are hijras, very often. They choose to forego the privileges of caste because they leave their families behind. They choose to forego the privileges of their biological families, inheriting money, inheriting all sorts of things. They choose to forego the privileges of marriage. And very often, today they try to, a lot of hijras try to have relationships with men. Very often they're not successful, but historically, you have hijras and fakirs and sadhus as people who've always been outside the norm of marriage. So for me, it's important to then question, this idea of security. If you leave marriage behind, if you leave caste behind, if you leave the traditional, what we understand as traditional family behind, what are you left with? You still have to have some kind of network, some kind of, somebody to hold your back. And then what you end up having very often is equally hierarchical, set of relationships that nobody really thinks of. When we think about quitting marriage, we don't think about this, right? So I think it's important to think about the diversity of narratives. I think I do agree that there is an awful lot of legitimate violence that happens within the way marriage is structured today. But I also think it's important to just think about other ways of being, which people constantly do create for each other, for themselves. I don't think just because you are in a marriage, you lose agency immediately. I don't think that just because the kind of relationships you build for yourself is called a family, you lose all agency immediately. I don't think I think we have to think about the diversity of people's lives and people's narratives. And while saying I'm aware of the fact that I'm a man, And I have certain privileges also. And I can say certain things without having faced a certain kind of violence in my own life. And maybe, you know, other people who don't have that privilege experience it differently. But I think it's still important to think about diversity. And one of the ways, I used to teach in the US, and one of the ways I taught in a state college, and in the US and state colleges, you have military personnel who are in your class in uniform, because the way they can attend college is because the army has paid for their education. And when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still on the books, I constantly thought about my students who were military personnel. And I wondered how many of them were gay. And I wondered why Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a gay rights issue and not a labor rights issue. Because if they got thrown out, they wouldn't have these benefits. These benefits are how we live our lives also. They are the support networks that we require. So I think it's important to fight with the state and still say that you have to open up the categories, you have to open up ways of being, you have to be open to different forms and different forms of support networks, and marriage shouldn't be the only one. But a lot of people still want that. You know, the flip side of what you were talking about, the Calcutta lesbian, the Bengali lesbian couple, is that the fact that they tie their saris together, that is...
And in many historical times would be marriage. It would be the equivalent.
It would be marriage. It's how people understand the right of marriage today. So how do you have a critique of marriage and at the same time not judge, you know, what actually are a lot of choices making very difficult circumstances. I think that's the queer politics I'd like to see.
And I would say, I think, what is the ethical imperative to us as individuals? Right? I think the imperative you have is to challenge yourself. The imperative is for you to not rest on the easy normative assumptions of what is handed to you. I mean, individually, that is the only ethical claim you can make upon a person. That is the only ethical claim you can make upon yourself as a political person. And beyond that, you have to respect and forgive your own humanity. I think part of what we also do to ourselves is we search for these positions of pure politics. We search for these positions of purity and belief. They don't exist. They can't. If they existed, they would be fascist. And that's because the only way that purity can exist is through a violence where you ignore the complexity and reality of human life. And so I think that what I have kind of, just because you asked a reflexive question, for me personally, what I have tried to really do is just use the political life that I inherited from people who taught me politics to keep a certain ethical reflexivity in my life, to ask myself what my ethical understanding of my belief is, and whether I have that belief because I came to it on my own, or whether I am either being radical because I think it will be approved by people whose approval I seek, or being right-wing. You know, there are plenty of people who hold progressive beliefs for exactly the wrong reasons people hold non-progressive beliefs. Like radical activism is as bad as right-wing politics, and there is a way in which there is a way in which I think what we owe to ourselves is to constantly keep the questions of critique and construction together. Because you can't tear something down without building something else. And I think that's where my struggle with marriage is, right? I can tear it down. And then what? And then what stands? And so I think that the ethical challenge in a lot of ways is to really think about, you know, Mario once said something to me that has always stuck in my head, which is, what is the ethical responsibility of critique? And he said it has to have two things. It has to have rigor and it has to have empathy. Because without rigor and empathy, it is critique for the sake of criticism or destruction, not critique for the sake of understanding and to move forward. And I think that if you seek that notion of critique, and if you hold on to rigor and empathy, then you will find a political and ethical life that makes sense for you. And that's actually the most that ignite will do. You should close up. Yes.
I want to add to that,
Sure.
in terms of like what are we building in critiquing marriage, and as he acknowledged, is a privilege and it doesn't exist. And marriage is, no matter how much we speak about its diversity and all, it is not only just here, it is institutionalized in a particular way, and it is very important to recognize that. And more we endorse that this is the difference that has to be made. Marriage and its immense.
Let me ask you a question. So is caste. So will you ask Dalits not to take reservation and reserve seats in college?
Huh?
So is caste, and it's institutionalized through reservation. So does it mean you put the burden on not taking reserved seats on that?
No. Marriage works in a very different way.
But in some ways, institutionalization of identity, caste does exactly the same thing. And many people argue by accepting reservation, we institutionalize caste. By counting it in the census, we institutionalize it. By taking a caste reserved seat, you reproduce the system.
Yeah.
But can the burden of not reproducing in the system fall upon precisely those who are most vulnerable within it? I'm just saying that just to add to the complexity of what you're saying, I'm disagreeing with you. You're
And also, I find that is probably one reason we haven't been able to bring back the confidence, because we're too much invested in it. It's too much of investment. And if we do not take ourselves out of it, it's even not possible to visualize something else. So the more and more we are embedded in it, and it's impossible. What is the alternative we have? We have to talk about it seriously. Everything that is not family, that is not marriage, that is not spouse, those relationships are not visible precisely because we are too much invested in this.
Should we close? Any other last comments? Okay, so thank you to IIHS.